Okay, well, we'll show you what we've got so far. We are going to have to make a couple of alterations here. We're basically just going to have to bring the whole thing forward a little bit, because where we want to lie is in this little bit here, and that's a little bit too close to the front. But you can see the general idea of what we're trying to accomplish here, and I think we will be successful. I'm doing a time lapse on it as well, so yeah, I think we just need to bring everything forward. Now again, you don't have to have a freestanding Tarp to be able to move things forward. Luckily, because we're just taking it steadily, we haven't pegged it out, you know, too much. We've shown the feasibility study of long lines at the back here, which raises the back a little bit, which will give you, you know, a better shape for your lean-to, and we're lowering the edges here. Whoops, mind the hole. I knew it'd fall in that hole one day. But another thing that I think we might have to do, I just checked the direction, but I want it facing east, and it might not quite be facing east, so we might have to just bring it forward, but also swing it this way just ever so slightly, so it's more in line with that there. We haven't quite got it lined up how I want it either, to be honest, so I think I just need to make a couple of tweaks there. It's 20 past 3, so we've still got, you know, we've still basically got an hour of daylight, so we've still got time to mess around with this thing. And if it doesn't work, well, I'll just edit all this out and put the super mid up, which I brought with me as well. But I just wanted to try this and see how we get on after we were using the Monk Tarp. Good morning, everybody. Last night you would have seen a time-lapse thing of me erecting my tarp. I didn't do any more filming last night because I basically just wanted to settle down and chill out last night, and I maybe should have done a little bit of filming about 1 or 2 o'clock this morning, but I was really too tired and lazy, so I didn't bother. But there's 1 or 2 minor, not so minor, things have happened. So we're going to come on to the fact that my tarp has broken, but keep watching. And it's probably a good job that I did bring the super mid, because I will do a switcheroo later on. You could actually save it, you know, I'm not going to bother out here, but theoretically it's Cuben fibre, so you could save it. You notice that my head is leaning very, very close here. It's very difficult to sit up. I was hoping to get a little bit more of a lean-to effect in my pitch. kind of a bit like I did with the Monk Tarp, and it kind of worked, but I had to go quite a little way back into the shelter, and it's probably a good job that I did, because even though we didn't get a huge amount of rain, this is literally all that is left of last night. This whole area here, you know, got quite wet. So if I'd have been further forward, and bearing in mind this is still under cover, because I've put such a massive, you know, front on it, even though the rain itself didn't get in, it was quite damp and misty, so I think quite a lot of damp and mist got in. But the biggest problem, and I was quite surprised in a way, it was that the inside of this just literally acted as as a water sill. I mean, basically it just got saturated with moisture, and it was literally raining water down on me all night, and that's just one puddle left. And there wasn't a huge amount of rain. Like I said, you know, in the early hours of the morning, this was just so, you know, saturated, very, very wet. I did this sort of high door thing here and here, hoping that, you know, it would keep the rain out, which to a degree it did. Although at one point my head was getting, you know, a little bit on the damp side. But I'm a rough and tumble old bloke now, so, you know, it didn't really worry me. And I knew that I would be here, you know, for some time. So I knew there would be a reasonably good chance that I would be able to dry out, you know, literally by just being, you know, by wearing my hat, my head would dry it out. It was actually the hood on my jacket that got wet, but I knew that I would be able to, you know, dry it out. My sleeping bag got quite, the sleeping bag got quite damp. I maybe should have put the bivvy in, but I must admit I deliberately didn't, because I just wanted to see. And if you have as much condensation as I had last night, then, you know, maybe a bivvy bag is not a bad idea. But really, as long as you're undercover and you can try to prevent the condensation from literally raining down on you, I still ascertain that you don't need a bivvy bag if you're fully covered. And that was kind of my, that was going to be my storyline of this trip. You don't need a bivvy bag as long as you're undercover. And I still stand by that, because my sleeping bag did get very damp last night. It's treated with, it's quite an old sleeping bag, this one now. I've had this one probably 8 or 9 years or something like that, and it's still going very well. It's a PhD custom design, you know, to my specific. Go on their website, and I don't get anything for saying that. But yeah, you just go on their website, you like design your own. They're a bit more expensive now than when I was designing them on there, but I just wanted something that like was my size. And anyway, but it got quite damp in places. The whole upper, you know, it's damp there, but it's had a chance to dry out quite a bit, you know, in the last couple of hours since we've had some daylight. There, maybe somewhere. But it's treated, the outside of this, as most modern, you know, sleeping bags are and can be, with a durable water repellency outer. The feathers in this one are not treated. I think some of them are treated. Not really convinced that it's needed, to be honest. I'm sure it works fine, and I'm sure that the people that sell it say that it's absolutely essential, and I'm sure that people take in the marketing of it, and I'm sure that it is good. I'm not saying that it's not, but this bag, I can absolutely assure you, was pretty damn soaked on the outside during the night, because like I said, the inside of this thing was just raining water down on me. And I mean, now it's fine. So I kind of think that the warmth of your body kind of helps to, you know, as long as it's not overwhelmed, the warmth of your body helps to push the dampness back out again. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. I'm no expert, but it's, you know, like I said, it was absolutely soaked last night. I guess the problem could be, you know, if you were having to pack up, you know, first thing in the morning, and you were having to pack up when it was, you know, a little bit damp on the outside, or damp, and you haven't got the luxury of lying in camp, you know, for for as long as I do. Then when you're squishing it up, I guess maybe damp could, you know, flotate around there in a bit more. I don't know. I think I have, to a degree, debunked the idea that you have to have a bivvy with you, because this thing is dry, and it was saturated. Well, I don't know about saturated, but it was very, very wet on the outside of it last night. We're having breakfast, and then after breakfast I am going to collapse this down. I'm going to leave everything exactly how it is here, and I'm going to attempt to put the super mid over the top. Well, not over the top of this, I'll take this down obviously. Basically over the top of everything as to where I am. I'll show you what's happened to the tarp. I don't think it's a fault, because it's a 10-year-old tarp, and I think age has probably caught up. I think age has caught up with it in a couple of places. But we will have a look together later at my unfortunate failed tarp. I'm gonna have my breakfast first though. I'm gonna show you the damage. It's pretty much the same as it was at 2 o'clock this morning. It hasn't really got any worse, and you can see the Cuben fibre here has separated. This is obviously the strengthening point here. It's quite a small point, and you can see that it has delaminated down this line here, and it pretty much seems to stop around about there. So in theory, I'm not going to bother repairing it out here, but in theory, as long as you've got tape with you, which I do, so I mean I could repair it, I'm just not going to bother. But you know, if you've got tape, then you could, you know, tape it back up again and you'd be good to go. This side here is delaminated to about this point here, and it's just separated along here. So you could probably put some tape around there where it's good and strong, and there, and then just tape this up. It would probably look a bit untidy, but if you were in the middle of nowhere, as long as you had tape with you, which you jolly well should do, you would be able to, you know, repair it. You know, that is the beauty of Cuben fibre. I think two things have happened here. I will do a minor criticism of MLD, because yes, I am a bit of a fanboy, so never one to criticize, because their stuff is always, you know, very, very good. But I do think, given that it's a tap And it's obviously, you know, it's probably their first generation tap from 10 years ago. They've used large pieces of reinforcement on what they're considering the critical points, because they're probably thinking that it's going to be pitched in a traditional A-frame, because obviously, you know, you have this patch at the front here, which, so, you know, you're kind of expecting it to be a traditional A-frame. And, you know, the corners have, you know, much bigger, they could even do with being a bit bigger. I guess it's a safe weight, but, you know, a little bit bigger would make them stronger. You know, this point here is very tight, and that is held there. These points down here, they have held, and they're exactly the same. Maybe there's just more pressure pushing down because of the wind up there. There's probably more forces being exerted up there than there are down here. Unfortunately, these midpoints here, all three of them, as you can see, were quite small reinforced patches, and if they'd have been the same size as the others, like that for example, you know, even that one's quite small and that's small, they're the same size as those. I suspect if it had been bigger patches, probably would have held better. You know, that's my criticism as far as it goes, that I think bigger patches would have been better on these points, and then that probably would not have happened. The other thing just to bear in mind as well, of course, it's 10-year-old, and glue does degrade over time. And before you say, oh, you're just supporting MLD, well, yes, I'm always trying to, you know, it's good stuff, but if something happens, then it happens. I got an Arcteryx jacket, and a lot of that is bonded inside, and that's about 15, 16 years old or something like that. And nearly all of the glue in that has failed as well. And that's an Arcteryx, you know, jacket. So, you know, unfortunately, sometimes glue does, you know, give up the ghost, you know, and it's not necessarily designed to last forever. And I think that is, if you get a Cuben fibre shelter, they're very, 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 very good. And I highly recommend them, and I would still get them and I would still use them. But for the novice out there who doesn't fully understand Cuben fibre, what you're buying is a very, very specialist, a very specialist thing. I can't think of the bloody word. You know, comment below what I'm trying to say. You know, you're getting something that is very lightweight, won't absorb any water whatsoever, but it's not going to last forever. You know, your sil nylon shelters will probably go on for 2 or 3 times the length of a Cuben fibre shelter. A Cuben fibre shelter will last a long time, but not forever. And I know that some of the long distance hikers, which is really where I get some of my inspiration from, really, you know, they will take a Cuben fibre shelter on a 6-month trek, and they would have wrecked it, you know, by the end of that trek. So, you know, you do just have to understand that if you have Cuben fibre, it's basically not going to last forever. You know, it will eventually wear out. But even when it wears out, it still is fixable. You could get tape on that, as I say, and it didn't completely just fail. You know, it still held. You know, it's still held together. This is basically in 10 years, apart from my stuff sacks, which are fraying a lot, you know, in 10 years of use, this is the first time that I've had something fail, you know, after I've had it for a very long time. okay, it's probably not had a ton of use, but it's, you know, it's had some use. And glue does age with time, and as I say, unfortunately, I think with these smaller patches, it was just, I just put too much pressure on that. So probably user error as much as a design flaw, and just age. This one's fine, but then there was no real pressure on that. I mean, in theory, what I could do if I hadn't had the super mid with me, and I'm going to put that up because I just want some more space inside, to be honest now. But if I'd have only brought this with me, then, you know, you could still use it, because just switch it around. You'd have to move everything around inside, but just switch everything around inside, pitch the back to the ground. I've just pitched it obviously length to the ground that way to give me, you know, a great big front, which I must admit on this occasion probably didn't work, because I was still getting so much condensation inside, because there's so much you know, open to the air, that it was getting very, very wet inside. But like I said, you could quite easily just move things around if you can find the flat ground, and then just pitch it the tail to the ground. And okay, these 2 points here are now compromised, but you still have the corners are still fully functional, and this point here is still fully functional, and at a pinch, you know, they would be okay as well, as long as you just make sure there's nothing that could get wet, you know, from water getting in there. What we're going to do, just to keep things simple so that I can just carry on relaxing here for a couple more nights, is I'm going to take this down, leave everything as it is underneath, and put the super mid hopefully in the same place. Okay, well, the time lapse that I wanted to do failed, primarily because again, laziness, user error. When will I ever learn? That's why only 10 of you watches, because I knew that the battery in the GoPro Hero 10, we're shooting on the GoPro Hero 11 here, but I brought the 10 as kind of a backup and a jack of all trades where needed. It was telling me, it did stop, so it was telling me, it did stop recording a time lapse last night, and it still had about 30+% battery. And I must admit, I was forgetting that it had the old blue battery and not the new Enduro battery, which was a bit of a boo-boo on my part. So I think with the newer GoPro, certainly the 10 and 11, just don't bother at all with the old blue battery. You really do need the new Enduro battery. And the only reason I had the blue battery in there was because when you take the battery out, it loses all of its time and memory and everything. So I thought, well, I'll just put that in there at home, trying to be efficient. Oh dear. Anyway, so we didn't get the time lapse. Anyway, it went up very well. But basically, I don't know how much of a time lapse you got, probably not much. I basically undid all of the lines around the sides and the front of the tarp. I left 2 at the back in place. I then, over the top of that, put 2 pegs in for the super mid. They were not in the right place. I did have to jiggle it a little bit. But I put 2 pegs in at the back. Once they were in at the back, I put 2 pegs in at the front. Once the super mid was basically in an approximate position, I then took the 2 last pegs of the tarp out, and I've just sort of put it over in that corner for now. And I then just put the pole in the middle. Everything is exactly how it was. It's maybe got a bit jumbled up because of maneuvers, but basically the pole is in the same place. You could argue it's not exactly straight. It could maybe do with coming forward, because it's not exactly straight, but it's close enough. I just readjusted the pegs at the back. You don't need a freestanding Paul. You don't need a freestanding tent. You can do it quite easily without. I then just put the rest of the pegs in, lined it up one more time because it still wasn't quite in the right position, and then I've just opened the door, and it's quite breezy. Now there's another slight boo-boo that I made. If you remember in my last video, and I said that the weather station was on 0%, but don't worry about it because it'll be fine. The weather station's battery is completely flat. So I will have to put another battery in. But that's the first time I've had a flat battery in there. So I can't tell you how breezy it is. The forecast is saying 20, gusting up to 30. So I don't think it's 30. It doesn't feel 30. But that's what the forecast is forecasting. So anyway, we've got the Super Mid in position now. That's Lassie obviously splashing around in the water there. I did have a very, very strange thing happen to me, and I was a little bit concerned with my health last night for a bit, and I was wondering whether it was tiredness, fatigue, whether I've got some sort of brain aneurysm going on. But I googled the symptoms, and it's plain old vertigo. I always thought the vertigo was to do with a fear of heights, which maybe it is. But vertigo is also when you're looking at something and it shouldn't be moving, and it's moving. And I noticed it last night, and I've never in my life experienced where something's moving that shouldn't be. And because the tarp was completely open last night, I was looking up at the stars, which of course is blue sky now, and the stars were going zoom, 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 like that. It was the weirdest, strangest thing that I have ever experienced. I had to close my eyes and open them again. The stars were doing this business, and it felt very, very strange. Anyway, I turned over and looked at the other side of the inside of the tarp, and stuff close to me was moving as well. My kit was moving. I closed my eyes, and after 30 seconds or a minute, it settled down and it stopped doing it. And then I noticed when I turned around again and was looking at my cooking pot, the cooking pot was moving. And it's definitely not booze, because I don't drink. And then I looked at the stars again, and the stars were moving. Anyway, I did look it up, and it is to do with vertigo in the inner ear. So maybe my ears need syringing. I have been told I've been told to syringe my ears, to be honest, but as usual, I haven't done it. I never do anything. But then when I put the torch on, it's like, because everything was lit up, I can't explain why, but when the torch was on and everything was brighter, everything was still, nothing moved. And then when I turned the torch off and moved a bit, everything was moving again. Anyway, it cleared up after 20 minutes, half an hour of of 1 minute oddities, and it's fine now. And then when I woke up this morning, everything was fine. We've done quite a lot of maneuvers over the last couple of trips. So this trip, we're back to doing what I do best. Boring for most of you, I know. And that is, in a nutshell, doing nothing. Anyway, we're in camp, it's 12. I think it's time just to have a bit of a tidy up in here now. I got some headroom now. This is why I like the Super Mid so much, because I got, you know, I got an absolute ton of headroom here. You know, I've got plenty of room. Okay, I've got the wall there, but you know, I've got plenty of room all around me. It's just ridiculous, this shelter. It's just so brilliant. The Duomid XL, I think if you just want something, you know, a little bit smaller but with more room than a standard Duomid, then the Duomid XL is really, really good, and I really like mine. But I must admit, there is something ridiculously mad about this Super Mid that still probably makes it my second favourite shelter after the Trailstar, because you've just got so much room in here, and it's pitched on pretty rough ground. I mean, I've got a bit of quite a gap, you know, quite a gap there, you know, because there's a lump there. You know, you could obviously bring that peg closer in. If you brought that peg closer in, you'd reduce that gap down. So, you know, don't think that you have to have that gap like that. You could easily bring a peg in and get that closer to the ground. You know, the same over there. I've given quite long lines on there, but you could quite easily bring those edges in so that they're closer to the ground. I just like to have, you know, I'm not worried about airflow. Airflow doesn't bother me. It was really quite drafty, unsurprisingly, with that Tarp last night. And to be honest, if you're going to be, okay, too bloody old for this. If you're going to be, you know, outside in the wilds like this, you kind of have to embrace what's out here, not hide away from it, in a tent, you know, as if you're at home. I just prefer these shelters, but I will use a tent from time to time just to see how the other half live, and then I can give, you know, thoughts and opinions more on tents, you know, and this as well. But we've got another 2 nights here. I just thought I'd show you a double rainbow. We've got some pretty, and in fact the rainbow is coming literally down here. It's almost this side of the field. So there's a pot of gold literally just over there. We've just got this little bit of rain going across there, and the sun just starting to edge down. Just starting to edge down over that hill over there. It's been a nice sunny day. We'll catch up a bit more later